Thank you for tuning in to another episode of One More Story. We are back and hoping to reach even more listeners in season 2, so please, if you are enjoying the show, be sure to leave us a review and share with your friends. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's episode. My guest tonight is writer, director, editor Michael Felker, best known for his work on Synchronic, Something in the Dirt, and his feature directorial debut, Things Will Be Different, which premiered at this year's South by Southwest and will be released October 4th. Felker, welcome to the show.
Pete, thank you so much for having me, man. How's it going?
It's going great. I mean, congrats on your film and your release. Where can people see this on October 4th?
Oh my gosh. Well, you can see it in many different ways. It will be in theaters and on demand. It is already available for pre-order at thingswillbedifferentmovie.com or the Magnolia Magnet releasing website.
That's fantastic. So as far as theaters go, this is an independent film. So what kind of a release as far as cities? Do you have any idea yet? Or?
We have some cities. It'll definitely be LA, New York, and some scattered markets, but we're still in the thick of locking those last markets right now. So I'm sure I'll have an update well after this podcast finishes. But for sure, yeah, we're in a lot of cool places across the US.
Very cool. Anywhere in Alabama where your hometown folks can see it?
We're working on a Huntsville, Alabama release for sure. I was actually just in contact with Magnolia about specific theaters there. My whole friends and family, all down there in the South, are excited to go in droves there.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I can't wait. I don't have a release date yet for my movie, but that's one of the things that I've been looking the most forward to.
Oh yeah, you'll get one. You'll get a nice one. I'm excited for your movie, man.
Well, yeah, but just to have it in the town where I grew up.
Yeah.
There's something really special about that,
Oh yeah, no, it's a nice thing, and honestly, there's always these like smoke and mirrors about being like, ooh, can I get it playing in my theater that I grew up in or this local art house theater that I love? And you have a cool team that's with your movie that's definitely going to lock in something really cool in your hometown for sure.
Well, we have the same team, basically.
We do.
Slightly different, but a lot of the same players.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're rustic boys for a decade plus now, right?
Yeah, I mean, mine goes even further back before there was rustic, but that's how you and I first met, was on the set of Resolution. Was that your first job on a film right out of school?
Yeah, man. I graduated out of Florida State Film School, immediately went into internships that I greatly appreciated, but did not have the hook or draw of independent filmmaking. And then my first job was a production assistant on Resolution, and getting to make sure your face got enough coffee.
Well, it required a lot of coffee. Those were long days, long nights. Do you remember how cold it was in San Diego?
Oh God, it gets sneakily cold even in like the spring and summer months, because like I remember we were shooting some nights, especially for the end of Resolution, and my God, it was freezing.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we went and you and I recently rewatched it at that screening, and there were certain scenes where I vividly remember how cold I was.
How was it watching the screening like after all these years? That's like been my big thing, is like anytime I rewatch something I work on that's like a decade plus, I feel like, is that me? Is that like, that doesn't seem like me anymore.
It was really interesting. It was funny watching it this many years later. I hadn't watched it in forever. And I went into it, and I think every actor needs to go into their roles feeling like there's something redeemable or likable about your character. But now, looking at it through, the lens of a decade and a little more objectively, I wasn't a very likable character. I thought I was, and I guess I had forgotten like how self-righteous my character was.
Oh yeah, but like also you're, you know, a soon-to-be family man character in that movie. You're
Right.
trying to do what's best for your friend, and it's just some of the situation and circumstance stuff that is
Right.
like, interesting. But you come across incredibly likable, and especially when your character returns in the endless. I feel like both, Michael and then Vinny's character just having just this like comeuppance that happens after a resolution is just really interesting to see.
Yeah, no, I think Justin and Aaron did a great job of giving me, that moment of redemption at the end, where I do admit to being self-righteous. But I think that's what makes characters interesting. It's like their heart's in the right place, but it's misguided energy.
Oh yeah. I think it's like, what was somebody saying? Like some of my favorite characters are just like sometimes like bad people with good intentions. And I think like that's like the most fascinating character is just like, look, they're doing things that I don't genuinely like, but I can see where they're coming from. And it all is like for a greater good.
Right, because I think we all do that.
Yeah.
I think, we all go down a little well-intentioned, misguided path.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it was a trip to watch. Yeah, no, I got a kick. I mean, how was that for you? Your first, this started everything. I mean, how many films have you done with Rustic now as their editor?
Oh gosh, I think so. There's Spring, there's Endless, there's Synchronic, there's Something in the Dirt. And so I've been on with them for five, edited for four and a half if you count VHS Viral doing their first short with
Gotcha.
them was really fun. So yeah, I've been with them for longer than most people stay at any one job for sure.
And did you focus on editing when you were in film school?
It was probably my favorite of the crafts that you can actually learn a skill from. Like,
Hmm.
directing is one of those things where you kind of I've noticed this with directors where they kind of take the craft that they've learned before they did directing and applied it to directing. So directing's kind of just like wherever you kind of come from, you bring your skill set. But editing, I did a lot of in film school. I took basically every editing job I could for shorts and weekend projects, and just learned from there because it is like where for me at least, see the sauce get made for movie magic.
Right. So how did your editing skills translate to directing when you were on this feature?
It was basically the parachute ripcord anytime I was free falling in the middle of directing. I used it a lot for pre-pro. Like the more I see what I want to try and execute in post beforehand, the better I could be for my crew on set. But like when stuff kind of like hit the fan and production be what it may, you never have enough time, you never have enough money. What do you do when those things really butt up against a production where things can go through and contingencies are eaten up? You use editing as being like, all right, I don't have time to get all this coverage. So what I'll do is think about how it will go in the edit already and plan so I'm not burning out my crew, making sure we're still making a cool movie, and maybe save us the second meal.
Gotcha. How how does it affect your writing because you wrote this script as well?
Yeah, because I for the longest time, I would say for like my 10 years of working in Los Angeles and in the industry, I would always edit as much as I can for paying my bills, which would be digital stuff and music videos, TV shows, what have you, movies. And then I would take that money, kind of find myself a week or two to float back to writing for nothing and trying to see if I can make something. And I would write for weeks on end, taking what I learned from editing, going into the script, and then I would bounce back and forth between the two. So a lot of my writing style is actually me just trying to visualize what it looks like as an edit. Like I write in very short one sentence or one line descriptions that say like, here's what you see, here's what this is, here we are. And I feel like it at least gets a lot of production on board with some of the weird ideas I want to present as a writer.
Right. Well, so what tell me a little bit about the process for things will be different. What was the inspiration for this and how did you develop the idea?
Well, I am, as you kind of know from working with Rustic and just talking with me in general, I'm like a nerdy sci-fi kid. I basically grew up watching science fiction movies, horror movies, thrillers, what have you, at a very young and informative age. And so, when kind of trying to figure out what would be a great low budget indie movie to come together over the last few years, I just thought about what it was like to be a kid in that age, think about all the crazy sci-fi movies that I saw that had all this expansive world building, and wanted to apply to that my indie instincts that I developed when working on films like Spring, Endless, Synchronic, that like did a lot with a low budget. And so kind of made this movie for my science loving family who just loves a good science fiction, loves a little puzzle box movie that they can like pick apart and overthink afterwards. And that's how things will be different kind of came to be, just taking what I learned so far and pulling it together with what I did in my youth with my family.
Were you sharing, like, as far as the development of the script, were you sharing like a one pager with producers? Like, how involved were they with the
Well,
development?
Rustic, that's a good question. Rustic came on board after I did a draft, or I wrote my first draft in around 2022. After kind of talking about it with my dad, after we saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, we
Hmm.
just went to a diner afterwards and talk about the rules in the world of the movie. And then I basically went to tell my dad about this idea about this brother and sister who use a time traveling farm as like a safe house for them to hide out after a robbery. And then after writing several drafts with like, my team and my showing my wife who picked it apart to death, I sent it to Rustic. I sent them a draft in like around August of 2022. And I was like, they're not going to read it. The boys are shooting Loki. Dave's on other things. Like, I think that I just wanted their blessing, to be honest. And they got back to me right away, said it not only is a script that they love, but it feels like a Rustic movie through and through on the page. So they were incredibly supportive with that vision. Working with them for years, it developed this trust that they had with me in terms of just like, I want to try this thing or this thing in production, or I want to go for this casting choice. And they were like, yes, anding me the entire time. So from there, it's been really nice to like show them all these developments and just get nothing but unbridled support.
That's awesome. I mean, I had same experience.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah. I bet like they're awesome to work with.
yeah, no, they're very supportive and they fight for what you want, and great collaborators who will. I think what's great about them is they'll understand what you're trying to do, and even if you're missing the mark on a draft or your first, stab at an idea, they'll help you get to where you want to be.
Exactly. Exactly. They're like the type of people that like will see what you want to do, even if it's like everyone who is really good at giving notes knows how to separate what their taste is and what the movie you're trying to go for. And
Right.
they're really, really good at trying to go for what you're going for.
Well, and that's what I've always found with the notes process is like I want to get notes from people who understand what I'm trying to do. So even if I'm not achieving it on a first or second draft, because first drafts are always not very good, or a first cut, it's like where I want to go. We might have missed the mark so far, but like, how do we get to? And as long as we're all headed towards the same goal, then you're in good shape.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've definitely had several of those moments where there's just like beats in a script that we had to rewrite because we were trying to envision how we're going to do it versus the realization of actually doing it. There were times in the cut where, this time last year we were still editing the movie, and yeah, we had like these like things where like, oh yeah, that thing we tried on set, nailed it. This other thing that we had planned from day one didn't quite work out. How do we
Yeah.
figure out how to make it work without people who watch it go like, oh yeah, they tried something and they missed. Like it's a whole thing, and it was a really good process working with them, especially in the grind of this time last year.
But isn't that always crazy? Like these things that you like nobody notices on the page, the entire process. Everybody thinks it's just great and it's gonna work. It works on set. You get into editorial and you're like, this does not work. Why didn't anybody warn me?
Yeah, it happens all the time. I think that's like one of the things that I noticed as an editor, even outside of their movies, is that you can kind of see already in the edit a thing that worked on the page and worked on set, but as soon as you put it together with like another shot or something like that, you can really know if it worked or not. And sometimes it doesn't work. Some people. One of the biggest things I learned was that sometimes people shoot outside of their scope. Some people think they're shooting a multi-million-dollar movie when they only have like a 500,000 or less, and it's not obvious until you start putting it together. So thankfully there are times when we were shooting we're like, oh, you know what, I can already tell we're chasing a multi-million-dollar movie right now with this shooting style. Let me scale it back, pretend this is like a nothing budget movie, and shoot it my way out of a scene that way. And 9 times out of 10 it worked pretty decently.
Well, speaking of budgets, you clearly, wrote with a budget in mind because it's for the most part a single location. Tell me a little bit about that location and because it's beautiful. I mean, and all those giant, talking about a bigger budget, like those giant sweeping landscapes of was that Michigan where you shot it?
We actually shot it right over the border in Indiana.
In Indiana. Where in Indiana?
Fremont, Angola. It's like the corner by Ohio and Michigan.
Okay. I'm more familiar with the other corner.
Yeah, yeah. Being a Notre Dame guy, so yeah.
Well, we we don't have to talk about football. I know you definitely don't want to talk about college football.
Oh, we're not this year. Absolutely not.
But but
Go Knowles.
I had in my notes here, ask Felker if FSU still has a football program, but I'm not going to do that now.
I tune in for the channel in which Florida State plays, but all I see is one team just going up and down a field, and Florida State's not to be seen. So,
well, I digress. I do. So you shot it in Indiana, and by the way, people don't realize this. Indiana in the summer has some of the most beautiful sunsets over those cornfields. Looks like you shot at some different times of the year. So I want to hear about the challenges of a single location, the advantages of a single location, and how that all came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was originally conceived in my abandoned family farm in Michigan, and we wrote it completely with that in mind. I know that place like the back of my hand. We had cornfields as well. We had a couple of houses we were going to kind of shoot / put crew up in. And then as we were about a month away from shooting, the house was in such a poor state, and the conditions weren't right for us, so we had to pivot on the fly. So we kind of looked high and low throughout Michigan, and we looked through Illinois, we looked through Wisconsin, and then we found via Instagram, one of our producers, Shane, just looked up wedding venues, rustic wedding venues, and found this one called the Mill District in Fremont, Indiana. And they had it's like run by this couple that has basically bought a farmland that was actually a failed town. It has like different buildings that serve different purposes, but it's just now a town that failed. So they took this building that was once a post office and turned it into like an Airbnb guest house. They turned this like mill grain farm and turned it into like an indoor like basement chapel. And so we approached them with like, hey, we are a very small budget movie. We love your location. Is it okay if we can come and shoot? And they never had anyone shoot there before, but they just treated it like a wedding that lasted like a few weeks. So, and they were very cool about us coming back, not just for, shooting in the winter for 2 weeks because it's a time travel movie, but they allowed us to shoot in the summer so we can see the corn grow and shoot scenes in the corn that was on their land too. So it ended up being a real like blessing in disguise, considering the movie, nearly falling through with that. And we had a much better looking location than we originally conceived. So we really thank Jordan James Thompson over at the Mill District for having us.
Nice. Nice. No, it's beautiful. It reminds me, some of those shots remind me a little bit of Looper.
Oh yeah, Looper was one of our big inspirations for time traveling movies involving farms. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's at the top of the list.
Oh yeah, love that movie.
So, I want to talk about single locations because
Mm.
obviously it's a really smart way to go. For your first feature, you can keep the budget down. You don't have these massive company moves. But as a writer, there are challenges when you're committed to a single location. So tell me about some of those challenges and how you overcome those to move your story along when you can't actually physically move your characters anywhere.
It is really you nailed it on the head. Is that the positive of having a single location is cheaper budget, but it's incredibly hard to write a single location. I mean, Resolution was a single location place or a single location movie. Endless for a good chunk of it is also single location. How do you keep things moving? How do you keep the plate spinning, especially when your cast is small? And the big thing is that you just still have to write tight, and you still have to find a story that's worth engaging in a one location. Some people, you know, basically think you can have two people sit in a room for a long time, and that's a story that you can come across together. And unless you have incredibly engaging actors like Pete and Vinny in The Resolution, who can riff, it's tough. Especially, and then even in Resolution, you're able to like jump to different places and see the world building that comes from it, especially around the cabin. So I think the biggest challenge is to always keep things moving, always push your characters, find the world building around the location, find the story within like rooms in the house, find the story within production design in the house, and use that to inform what the characters are doing, and then have them make decisions based off of it. It still has to be a tight, engaging story. You still have to have characters make choices and actions, and then the world reacts back to them. And long story short of it, I hate to say this phrase, but treat the location like a character. It is a place that is living and breathing and also speaks back to you, the actors you have. So I feel like that's the number one thing to consider when shooting in a one location for sure.
Now, why do you say you hate to say that? Because I think that's the most succinct way of saying that.
Because like one of the things that I keep hearing is like, yes, the place is a character. Like it's like a trope in
Like,
like New York City is a character, this
right.
town is a character. Like I love the movie They Came Together, and they always make fun of the fact in They Came Together that in rom-coms New York City's a character. So
Yeah, I get. I mean, yeah. I
but there's
mean,
truth to it. There's truth in the kernel of that trope for sure.
well, and I also do think, because you told me that in a conversation, because I was asking you about, the challenges of writing a single location. And I think it's different if you're saying, "Oh, New York City's a character," but for a house, then you're like, "Okay, well, what's in this room? What are they discovering here? How does that like?" I think that's actually a really helpful thing for writers to know. If there are emerging writers listening to this, or experienced writers who are trying to get a micro budget or a low budget movie off the ground, I do think that's helpful, thinking of, what are the secrets of the story that this location can reveal.
I think I learned that from actually video games. Because video games,
Ah,
especially narrative driven video games, it's just you playing. And there's sometimes you don't get to talk to somebody. So that video games are a real hotbed for learning about environmental storytelling. You go around a room, you're interacting with things, you're picking up books, and you learn about a history of someone who wrote that book, or why this book was put here in the first place, and how it pushes your story and your progression through the game as well. So it really is. If you wanted to learn about writing a one location movie and how to make it engaging at the same time, play some video games that do environmental storytelling, and you'll learn a ton about what works and what doesn't work.
that is good advice, because I don't play video games, and so that's why this was all kind of like new information for me. And I
No, I
haven't.
mean it's
Yeah.
great that you get to. I get to tell it to people who don't know, because it helps me also like compartmentalize why things work and don't work. And You should play a video game, Pete. That's all I'm saying.
I don't have any time to do anything. I barely have time to edit this podcast. It's a miracle I'm still getting it out.
I also have no time to play video games. We were talking about my wife the other day, and it's literally like, I have 1 hour this week. What should we even play?
Yeah. Well, so you had a busy festival run. I want to hear a little bit about your festival experience and what that was like. And yeah, tell me
Oh,
everything,
oh
Felker.
my gosh. I mean, we were very lucky in that we got into South by, which was, our first festival we submitted to. It's one of those things where I used to program for bigger film festivals too. I did several years as a programmer for Slam Dance, so I've been on the other side of how easy it is for a good movie to slip through the cracks, just because you not only engage with it as a programmer, but you have to get everyone else engaging with the movie. And is it worth giving a valuable slot? Is the movie worth not only discussing in a venue in which people can come and see the movie, but also bringing the filmmaker out or the team out to come and talk about the movie with meaningful discourse? So we were very lucky that South by saw things will be different and thought it was good for the program. And ever since then, I feel like one of my biggest things, if you ever get on a festival run of some kind, go to as many film festivals as possible, because you get not only a sense of people who liked your movie and wanted to like engage in discourse with you all over the world, but you get a sense of why this location, why this place, why this region really like this movie. And you get a sense of like how your movie engages with different cities or cultures or regions of people that you would have never seen before. And it opens your mind and brain to other ideas and shooting locations, but also to just like different stories around the world. And you get to meet tons of fascinating filmmakers with their amazing movies that open your world up too. It's one of those things where there's a value and a currency to going to festivals that's more than just actual money. Like, you go meet the people, engage with like really awesome fans and filmmakers, and have the time of your life.
Yeah, no, I can attest to, the short that I did that you edited,
Oh yeah,
I should
absolutely.
mention. Yes, Occupant, premiered at Fantastic Fest, I think, 5 years ago, maybe. I don't know. I've lost track of
Oh,
time.
I should have gone. As someone who was like, I do go to every film festival, and I didn't go to that one. Damn.
It was great, and I do think going to all these other screenings and seeing what other filmmakers are doing, things that you would never even dream of, films that, whether I liked them or didn't, it was just so nice to just see other perspectives and other filmmakers taking big swings and doing really interesting things. And yeah, it is and Fantastic Fest is truly one of my favorites. I mean, it's such a great environment.
I know we're recording the day that Fantastic Fest starts, so I'm bummed
That's
that I'm not there.
that's right. Well, we're here. We're here in the valley, and thankfully it's not crazy hot today.
Oh my
So,
god, thank God.
well, my last little bit here is I want to ask you. You've been very busy finishing this film, getting it out there, getting it ready for release. I'm sure you're writing something new. You got a lot going on. How do you wind down at night?
Oh my gosh. I wind down at night by making sure, and this is something that you have to practice, especially when you're freelance, because it's so easy to work till 1 and 2 in the morning and then burn yourself out over the course of a week. I was a freelancer since my early 20s, and I'm no longer in my 20s. I'm late 30s, so need to definitely slow down. And one of the things I do is literally just take away some screen time. I usually like make like a cup of tea in like a little thermos to go, and I just walk around my neighborhood as the sun sets. It's literally a way to like get away from a window of light of people reaching out to you and asking for 10,000 things, and allows you just clear your mind and just see the season change as best as you can in LA, but mainly just feel the crispness in the air and ground yourself again. So I recommend wholeheartedly walks. if the weather's nice, especially at sunset with some tea.
What kind of tea?
I am a chamomile man from birth to death, man. I love chamomile tea.
Gotcha. I'm a sleepy time tea guy.
They're about the same. Yeah, a chamomile lavender with a little sleepy time just to really take the coffee edge off. It's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know if I'd make it through a walk after like sleepy time extra. Like I think there's a narcotic in that. I'm pretty convinced it does the trick.
Hmm.
I mean, I know everybody's, brains and bodies are different and they react
Hmm.
differently to things, but I find like I feel like I've been drugged after sleepy time extra.
My thing actually, it helped a lot on set when things got pretty stressful and I needed to get my 6 hours of sleep was CBD, taking
Yeah.
CBD drops.
Yeah.
Just one little thing that it's basically just sleepy tea by times five. Like it just is like, oh, okay, I can just hang out and sleep like a baby with my brain not going a mile a minute. So
Yeah, I mean that's the key. You gotta shut off the brain and wind it down. Well, speaking of winding things down, are you ready to dive into a couple stories?
oh yes.
Fantastic. All right. The word is royalty. Once upon a time, in a faraway land called Europe, somewhere in Europe, just general continent of Europe, there lived a young girl named Jocelyn. And Jocelyn was a poor peasant girl. She worked the fields alongside her 8 brothers and sisters and her mother and her father. They all worked because in those days there were no child labor laws, and the royalty had a nasty habit of exploiting young, poor labor. And the conditions were harsh, but Jocelyn and her 8 brothers and sisters and her mother and father always kept a positive attitude. Even when the hot sun would beat down on their necks, even when the bales of hay that they had to move, sometimes they had to move these bales of hay when the horses were too tired because the royalty would work the horses too much. And so then the peasants had to move the hay. And even when the hay got really, really heavy and kind of scratchy, they didn't provide them with gloves, and sometimes the shirts they wore were kind of thin and hay, could be kind of scratchy, and it could get through a thin shirt. And Jocelyn often had some scratches on her arms, and at night when they settled into their tiny 2-bedroom cottage, her mother would put some ointment on her arms to help heal the scratches, and they would sing songs and they would eat their meager meals of porridge, and maybe they'd get a little bit of meat that was left over from a royal banquet. Sometimes the court jester, who they really liked, because who doesn't like a court jester? I guess some people don't like the court jester. They find them a little bit over the top, but they're well-intentioned. There was a court jester named Raphael, and Raphael was a dear family friend, and sometimes he would sneak out of the royal palace and he would bring them some custards, some delicious desserts, some Turkish delight, and maybe a bit of venison that had been left over from the hunt. Well, one evening, Raphael came to visit, and he had stolen something from the royal palace that he brought with him.
So Raphael came up to the door of Jocelyn's place and knocked 3 times. This special 3-time knock let Jocelyn know that Raphael was out the door with another delight. So Jocelyn rushes down the stairs with a second wind of energy after another hard day's set of labor. She opens the door and sees Raphael there. And she notices something special in his hands. In his hands was a special blue crystal crown. Jocelyn was perplexed by this blue crystal crown and asked him, "Where did you get this headpiece, this crown?" Raphael says, "It's a wild story. I was performing once again for the kingdom, for the king and queen, another comedic routine. And the king and the queen, as usual, now bored of my comedic ramblings, were asleep. And so, while they were asleep, I usually try to steal some of these Turkish delights for you. But then I noticed something new in the store of Turkish delights that were, the Turkish delights were in this cabinet that was right by the king and queen entertainment chamber. And in the store was a special blue chest. Thinking that it was another delicious delight, I look inside and I found this blue crystal crown. And I have no idea what it does. I have no idea where it came from. All I knew is that I wanted to grab it and bring it over to you because I think it would fit your head just perfectly." So Jocelyn, blushing at the mere mention that this blue crown was a gift for her specifically, thanks the court jester, Raphael, and says, "Do you mind if I try it on right now, right away? I hope it fits me, and if it doesn't, we should return it right away because we shouldn't get you in trouble whatsoever." And Raphael's like, No. You can try it on. I know it will fit you. Trust me, it is a gift to you for being my friend." So Jocelyn takes the crown very gently, this crystal crown. Even in the dead of night, it still reflects a magical light, refracting some light that we cannot see. She puts it on her head, and it radiates a special rainbow that goes around. It's so bright and beautiful that it wakes up her 8 brothers and sisters in the house as they look out the window and see this light radiating out. The mother, the whole family, the brothers and sisters rush down the stairs to see if this is the light from the kingdom, if there's someone visiting the house, and they see that Jocelyn's wearing this blue crown. The youngest brother comes up through first, and he's had a rough day. He scraped himself up pretty bad from moving these bales of hay before, and he's the one who first comes up first with his scratched up arm, and he sees the crown is so beautiful that he can't help but reach with his scarred up, scratched up arm to want to touch it. The youngest brother, Daniel, he says, "Jocelyn, can I see this? Can I touch the crown?" Jocelyn then leans down and says, "Yeah, you can absolutely touch it." And as soon as he touches it, the wound on his arm is magically gone.
And Jocelyn's mother gasped audibly. "The healing crown of Danube." And Jocelyn said, What is that? What does that word mean? What's this healing crown?" And she said, "This is a sacred crown, and only the one true queen of the kingdom can activate its healing powers. For centuries, men and women have tried on this crown, and it remained as dull as your youngest brother, Billy. No offense, Billy, but Billy got kicked by a mule at a very young age, and And he was dull. He was just kind of a dull kid. Not his fault. Not his fault. Well-intentioned, just slightly dull. Anyway, I digress. Jocelyn said, well, Mother, what does this mean? What does it? Well, she said, this is exactly what it means. Exactly what I said it means. It means you are the one true queen of the kingdom. And Raphael, usually one to make a joke in any situation, got very serious and said, well, this is bad, because the real queen, who's back at the palace, is probably not going to like this news. And in fact, we should probably give it back immediately and never speak of this again, because they'll be after us. They'll be off with my head, and I need my head, because that's where my jokes come out of my mouth, which is part of my head. And they're always beheading people. They're always looking for a tiny reason to do that. They're very trigger happy over there with the guillotine, and this is actually, this calls for it, because it's a threat to their power, and that's all they have. So we got to figure something out. And as soon as he had finished delivering this rather rambling, terrified monologue, they heard horses in the distance approaching. And Raphael said, quick, to the woods.
And so Raphael, Jocelyn, and her entire family pack up as much as they can to survive the woods and flee into the dark tree line behind their house. The sound of horse galloping gets closer and closer and closer. And being a lowly working class family, they do not have enough horses for everybody. So they all run on foot into the tree line and hopefully will find safety and invisibility amongst the dark from the galloping horses. Because as we all know, this special amount of galloping horses can only come from the kingdom in which the jester stole the blue crystal crown. No matter how fast they were running through the fields towards the tree line, the galloping hooves just got closer and closer and closer. Jocelyn turns back over her shoulder and sees a row of orange torches taking over the horizon from which they came. It is the entire fleet of the kingdom trying to come back and take the crown in which they had claimed as theirs. So they run deep into the woods, and everyone tries to find a special hiding place amongst the trees. But unfortunately, the crown does not obey the rules of the darkness of the trees. It just glows brighter, as if a beacon to call, hey, here's the crown, come and take it. So Jocelyn tries to take it off her head, but unfortunately, it won't come off. It is locked on. It's as if the crown has found its home and does not want to leave. So as the rest of the family goes and hides, Jocelyn has to stand out in the middle of the grove in this forest, awaiting her ultimate doom to the kingdom that's rushing. Raphael, the jester, tries to offer her up some sort of place to hide her head in the ground, perhaps in this log that's right by him. Raphael's like, please, Jocelyn, please come. Hide in here in the moss. If you don't, they'll come and catch you. But Jocelyn, feeling the weight of the moment in which she can stand her ground, shakes her head silently and just waves him off to go hide into the shrub. Finally, the kingdom of horses catches up. Leading the charge is the king and queen, now no longer slumbering from a bad 5-minute open mic, but they are angry to see that their rightful treasure of the blue crystal crown is now sitting on top of her head. And as they're circling, the king slowly tries to step off with a sword in his hand to take off her head in which to claim the crown. The king steps off the horse and says, if you can't take that crown off your head, I will take it off myself. As he approaches, he reaches up with his sword, about to strike down onto Jocelyn. But as the sword comes down over her head, the light of the crown turns night into day. And then all of a sudden, all of the animals in the forest show up and surround Jocelyn as if to protect her from the safety. The queen and the king, in all of this spectacular moment of nature, see that this is the destiny of the Blue Crown. They are overwhelmed. King in his rage immediately dissipates and says, "Oh my goodness, what was I thinking? I was so caught up in my selfish ways of taking the crown back that I realized you have united this dark forest. For you see, this dark forest has never had a squirrel or a bird. It has been desolate and dead. But now that I see that you've brought light back to this forest because you are the true heir to this crown, you now gotta join us at our kingdom." And so the king and queen took Jocelyn, Raphael the Jester, and her entire family back to the kingdom and gave them a special new place in the kingdom that not only kept the forest going for another century and beyond, but gave an air of peace to the entire kingdom, where the working class was able to have better working conditions and all war had ceased to happen throughout all of the magical land of Europe. The end.
Michael Felker, are you ready for one more story?
I am ready.
All right. The word is flounder.
Once upon a time, there was a young boy named Pip. Pip lived in a special town right by the sea known as Flounder Yonder. Now, Flounder Yonder, as you guys obviously know, is a special town known for discovering the animal of the fish. Now, you think fish have been around for beginning of time on the planet Earth, but that's not exactly true. See, Flounder Yonder is where a group of people who were walking across the beach landscape thousands of years ago found a body of water in which they discovered the fish. And not just one type of fish, but all types of fish that you could think of. Clownfish, starfish, whales, everything you can find, turtles, all marine life lived here, but the fish was discovered here first. And so Pip, as a young boy, only knows about this town and the world of fish. One day, as Pip is walking down the beach and he's collecting seashells for his town in order to, sell these seashells to nearby towns and to make money for the town, he finds a special little fish that is able to walk on land. Now, Pip does not know that fish could do this. He's looking around and being like, am I seeing things? Have I been collecting seashells too long? Has the sun been beating down onto me? Or am I actually seeing a fish walking on land? Now, this fish just looks like a goldfish. It basically looks like any other goldfish you would see in an aquarium or in a fishbowl. But instead of it swimming around in the water, it's able to stand on its back two fins and waddle across the sand. It's basically like each fin is strutting with all of its might onto the shore while the other one swings over and acts like a second leg. Each little end of the fin is another leg. Pip walks up to this fish and studies it for a second. And basically the fish stops and looks back up at him as if he's like, what? You never seen a walking fish before? Pip goes and studies the fish from all angles before finally asking, are you a walking fish on land? The fish then thinks for a moment as if understanding the English language that Pip is saying, looks back up and says, yes, I'm walking on land. And I can also talk. I can speak your language perfectly. Pip gasps at the entire sight of what he's seeing, a walking, talking fish of the town of Flounder Yonder. Pip then asks, what are you doing on land? Why are you walking on land? Why are you talking to me? What's going on? The fish then goes, well, I'm the ambassador of the underwater kingdom Yonder Flounder. We're coming to broker a peace treaty. We've now served our 100 years underwater, and we're now wanting to come back and join the people on the land. Flounder Yonder is caught off guard and does not know what any of this means in this history. So Pip is basically like, so who do you want to talk to? Do you want me to take you somewhere? And well, by the way, what's your name? And he's just like, oh, I guess we don't really have what you would call names down there, but you can call me whatever you want to call me. And Pip looks at his scales and his fins and goes like, I'm gonna just call you Goldie. Is that okay? Can I call you Goldie? And the fish, now known as Goldie, goes, yeah, Goldie's great. Do you have the mayor of the town that I can speak to? I feel like we've served our time, and now I need to go and make peace treaty. So Pip is like, well, we the mayor that you once knew is maybe not around, but I could take you to somebody. So Pip takes Goldie to town. He takes him to the city hall. It's a very small hut in this middle of this boating harbor fish town. And meets the mayor, known as Mayor Timothy Tim. It's a weird thing to have your name and your first name and your last name be the same, but that's just something that happens here at Flounder Yonder. Timothy Tim, who's in the middle of a busy day at the harbor and dealing with all this paperwork that's coming in to make sure everything's traded, notices Pip walk in, and he's walking in with a fish in his hands that is standing on his two fins. And he waves hello, basically, as soon as he walks in. Timothy Tim drops all of the papers that are in his hand and gasps. He knows what this means. He runs all the way across the room, right up to Pip, looks right at Goldie, and says, my goodness, is it time? Is the prophecy foretold? And Pip goes, yes. It's I was just talking with Goldie here. Goldie says it's time for us to broker peace. And Timothy Tim's like, we need an extension. And Pip's like, what do you mean you need an extension? And Goldie's like, oh no, not this again. We're not doing another extension. And Timothy Tim's like, no. You see, like we have a deal. Like there's certain fish that the city underwater sends like basically little food for us to sell up here, and if you guys make a peace treaty, we won't function as a town anymore. We won't function as like a prospering town that is supposed to make money. And Fit Goldie is just shaking his head and just like, not anymore. We're done with this. We're tired of selling our young, and we're tired of making this deal where we stay underwater. We deserve to be up here. It's time for us to come home. And Timothy Tim's like, what can we do? How can we keep this going? We need to like absolutely find a way to make this work. So Timothy Tim and Goldie are at a standstill. The town of Yonder Flounder underwater wants to come up, and Timothy Tim wants to keep them underwater to not disturb the economy. Then Pip thinks hard. Well, how can I help this? I've been doing nothing but grabbing seashells all my life and selling them here. Maybe there's a way to think about this. And then Pip remembers something that he hasn't told anyone. He has a secret seashell store that he's been keeping in his family for generations. Basically, for any seashells he doesn't sell, he keeps them in a nearby sea cave. It's something that has been passed down from generation to generation here at the town of Flounder Yonder. And his whole family at this point, it says that one day you'll need this store to help save this town and the towns beyond. Pip realizes that this very moment, that secret store of seashells is the key to save their situation. So Pip raises his hand amongst the two of them and says, I got it. My whole family has been saving a store of seashells. What if we pivoted our entire economy to do seashells selling out of here exclusively? That way, you don't need to lean on selling fish and bartering goods from the town of Yonder Flounder underwater. And the town of Yonder Flounder can come up with the seashells they find underwater too to help. We can then change our entire economy and live in peace. Timothy Tim thinks for a moment. He tries to poke holes in the situation, but obviously he can't. He thinks, seashells are a better and a safer and more humane way to sell goods out of our town. And Yonder Flounder's like, yeah, that's true. Down at the bottom, we don't think about seashells as barter because they're everywhere, but not on land. You could totally sell seashells on land and make a fortune. Let's do this. Let's turn this entire seabed economy into a seashell economy. And so, with the declaration of Flounder Yonder versus Yonder Flounder, they sign a document in which they turn the entire town into a seashell economy, and the entire town of Yonder Flounder underwater comes up and makes refuge in Flounder Yonder on land, turning it into Flounder, the town of fish people and human people alike living peacefully for another 100 years. The end.